may not have thought about the 78 million people who call Korea their home. Most of them workers like you and me on their daily grind to keep life going. Every year on this day, August 15th, Koreans remember Gwangbokjeol, National Liberation Day, when our country freed itself from 35 bitter years of Japanese occupation. We also remember that days later, the US divided Korea and began its own occupation of the southern half. 28,500 US troops across 62 US military bases now waste Korean territory and conduct military exercises 275 days a year, making the specter of war a part of daily Korean life. And for 80 years, the US has forced South Korea into political and economic subservience, so that in addition to the staggering human and environmental costs of US occupation, many Koreans endure abject working conditions to finance it. Yesterday, thousands of people flooded the streets of Korea to protest the US-South Korea joint war games known as Ulchi Freedom Shield, and to oppose the recent tariff deal through which the US is coercing South Korea to hand over $450 billion. That's a quarter of its entire annual GDP for yet another Wall Street bailout. Today, we join the people in Korea and others in Los Angeles, Oakland, Seattle, Philadelphia, and Washington, D.C. to demand better. We demand an end to war games on our homeland. We demand an end to economic exploitation. War games and tariffs make no sense to anybody but the ruling class of the United States, who are willing to destroy Korea so they can spend Korean money, Korean land, and Korean soldiers on a delusional war with China and North Korea. We demand US out of Korea! Tariffs and a war-torn Asia don't benefit American workers either. Trump's big, beautiful bill gutted literal benefits like SNAP, housing programs, and Medicaid, so the Pentagon budget can be raised to $1 trillion. We know that when the system called US imperialism persists, our hard-earned wages turn into bombs aimed at Palestinian children. An oversized budget for ICE? Or a corporate executive's brand new yacht? Hell no! A handful of billionaires trying to stay rich by making horrible decisions for the rest of the world will not be tolerated any longer. Our planet, our lives are worth more than that. This Gwangbokjeol, this Liberation Day, stand up and fight back. We are not human collateral. We are the global masses. Wake up to our common chains and wake up to our common power to break them. Wake up to the joyful, steadfast struggle for true liberation. You can also wake up to water and snacks in our supply cart to your left. From Peksusan to Halakha, US out of Korea. US out of Korea. From Peksusan to Halakha, US out of Korea. US out of Korea. All right. Without further ado, please give it up for our first speaker, Yumi, a fellow comrade in Nolutor.
All right, I want to hear y'all for this. No boots on the ground, no bombs in the air. No boots on the ground, no bombs in the air. US out of everywhere. US out of everywhere. No boots on the ground, no bombs in the air. No boots on the ground, no bombs in the air. US out of everywhere. US out of everywhere. Thank you. And hello. I am proud to stand here today in solidarity with thousands of people across the country and in Korea to denounce the U.S. South Korean war games known as Uchi Freedom Shield. Today is also the 80th anniversary of Korea's liberation from Japanese colonialism. It should be a day of celebration. But we are still in the streets 80 years later because as long as our country continues to be occupied, whether by the Japanese in the past or by the U.S. today, we will never truly be liberated. That's right. As soon as Japan surrendered in 1945, the Korean people ran to the streets and yelled, "Manse," or "Long live," in celebration. Koreans throughout the peninsula immediately started organizing local people's committees in order to begin the task of governing ourselves. The greatest concern of the majority of Korean society was reclaiming land stolen by Japanese colonizers and Korean collaborators. It was the people's committees, not the U.S., that began the process of decolonization. Within just a few weeks, representatives of hundreds of people's committees met in Seoul to declare a new nation, the People's Republic of Korea. However, while the Korean people organized to govern ourselves, the U.S. schemed to divide the peninsula at the 38th parallel. This was done by two American Army officials who arbitrarily drew a line on a map. No Korean was asked and no Korean consented. When the U.S. military arrived in Korea, it declared itself the supreme authority south of the 38th parallel, outlawed the People's Republic, crushed the People's Committees, and began a counter-revolutionary war in the south that killed 100,000 people over the next 5 years. Then came 1950, and the U.S. imperialist war on Korea reached a fully genocidal stage. 4 million Koreans were killed before the ceasefire in 1953. The Korean War is known as the Forgotten War. But how can we forget when the boots of that war still stand on Korean soil? How can we forget when the threat of another war hangs over every child? And now, every August, when we should be celebrating National Liberation Day, the U.S. and South Korea rehearse war. They call the war games Uchi Freedom Shield. And let me be clear, Uchi Freedom Shield is a rehearsal to restart the Korean War. They rehearse the invasion of North Korea. They rehearse the use of nuclear weapons against the Korean people. They rehearse another genocide. They tell us these war exercises are defensive, but we know the truth. These are acts of aggression that threaten the peace and livelihood of the Korean people. The Trump administration says it wants to renew dialogue with North Korea, but we know their words and actions completely contradict each other. They speak of peace while preparing for war. Trump is not a peacemaker. He is just another imperialist using threats to dominate other countries and start wars that will kill millions of the poor while making the richest people in this country even wealthier. The U.S. says the war games are about protecting South Korea, but we know they want to use Korea as a pawn, as a military outpost in the new Cold War on China, and U.S. plans to start a new war in Asia. Earlier this year, Xavier Brunson, the commander of U.S. Korean forces, even called Korea a fixed aircraft carrier floating between Japan and China. The U.S. also has operational wartime command over the South Korean forces, meaning in a situation of war, South Korea's own military would answer to Washington instead of its own people. Uji Freedom Shield makes Korea's destruction a reality in the making, and the Korean people have already suffered the deadly consequences. In March of this year, residents of Pocheon had 8 500-pound bombs dropped on their homes during preparations for these U.S.-South Korean war games. Over 30 people were hospitalized and more than 150 homes were damaged. This is not defense, this is destruction. Shame! Shame! 80 years since the U.S. occupation began, our struggle continues. We must stand in solidarity with our comrades in Korea who have demanded an end to these war games for years. They understand, as we do, that the main enemy of Korea's peace and the liberation of all oppressed people in the world is U.S. imperialism. By being here today, we are continuing a great legacy from our ancestors, the true freedom fighters. They resisted Japanese colonization with a steadfast belief that Korea would become an independent nation. That belief lives within us as we say, "End the war games, leave our